Hello, today is the anniversary of the death in 1770 of George Whitefield. George Whitefield was a colleague and friend of John Wesley. They met at Oxford and were both members of the Holy Club, that group of people who wanted to find a deeper spirituality than they were discovering in contemporary Anglicanism. And of course that's what led to the Methodist movement. But George Whitefield and John Wesley, though close friends, were very different in their theology. George Whitefield was a Calvinist, and he believed that getting to heaven was a matter of predestination. God chose who was going to get there, and it was only because God enabled it that they did. And there was this division between those who were predestined and those who weren't. Whereas John Wesley believed in an inclusive way to heaven. Everybody had a pathway to heaven, and what determined whether you reached heaven was your own faith and commitment. A very different approach, and of course, as any Methodist will know, it was the idea that all can be saved. That is the foundation of Methodism. The idea that it was only available to some, a Calvinist doctrine which is much less common these days, was an anathema to John Wesley and to subsequent Methodists. But this friendship that they had did manage to survive their very profound theological differences, which were quite public, although George Whitefield had a bit of a struggle publicly coming out against Wesley, but he did in the end. After that occasion, he was asked by a reporter whether he would see John Wesley when he got to heaven, and George Whitefield said no, he wouldn't. And the reporter said, well, that's what I thought. But Whitefield said, but you haven't understood me. John Wesley will be so high up in the ranks of heaven that I shall never see him. Well, we can put aside any idea that heaven is hierarchical, but the idea that George Whitefield, though profoundly disagreeing with John Wesley's theology, nevertheless respected him and admired him in that kind of way, I think is an example to us. And in a world where there is increasing divergence of political opinion and often of opinion about belief and religion too, as well as perhaps sometimes difference over more personal matters. I think it's a good reminder how valuable and important it is to go on respecting and doing what we can to make sure we honour the people who we profoundly disagree with. They may be wrong in our view, but they're still human beings, and in the case of John Wesley and George Whitefield, were able to remain friends, and that I think is a quality and indeed a triumph that I think we'd all like to emulate.